This video will cover linear equations in slope-intercept form. There are two common ways in which we represent linear equations. One of them is going to be the standard way, where you have x plus y equals a number, but we're going to put an emphasis on slope-intercept form because it makes it a lot easier to graph. So the vocabulary for today is going to be a linear equation, and this is an algebraic equation in the form y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. The next vocab that we need is inverse operations. Those are operations that undo each other, so addition and subtraction are inverse operations, and we also have multiplication and division. They're inverse operations. You use them to cancel each other out. And then we're going to be writing variable. A variable is going to be a letter or a symbol that represents a number. This can be anything. It can be an X, it can be an A, it can be a Y, it can be a W. We don't have anything specific. We're going to be working with X and Y mostly. The higher you get in math, the more variables you're going to be using. This video will be very straightforward. So the first thing that we need to pay attention is to write the equation in the form y equals mx plus b. To be able to do that, the first thing that we're going to do is to draw a vertical line. So let's start drawing a vertical line down the equal sign. Okay, and then the next part says highlight the terms with the variable y. In this case, we only have one term with the variable y, so we're going to highlight that part. Only the y. And then we're going to isolate the variable using the inverse operations. So now we have two variables, but the one that we need to isolate is the one that is highlighted, or y, because we need to have it in the form y equals mx plus b. So the first thing that we're going to do is pay attention to whatever is next to the y. So in this case, we have 3x. The opposite of 3x is going to be negative 3x. So we're going to write negative 3x, but what you do to one side, you're going to do it to the other side. Now you have to be very careful, because on the left side, yes, these items are going to cancel, but on the right side, we're not able to combine these two. This one doesn't have a variable, this one does have a variable, so we need to write them as two different terms. So on the left side, we're going to have negative y. On the right side, we're going to have negative 3x plus 4. You could have written this as 4 minus 3x. It's totally fine. It's the exact same thing. Now, we're going to make sure that that variable is still highlighted. We're trying to leave the y by itself, but right now we see that we have a negative sign right here. So we need to get rid of that negative sign, because if you read y equals mx plus b, there's nothing in front of that y. So to be able to do that, I'm going to divide both sides by negative 1. When you divide by negative 1, a negative and a negative will give you a positive. So our answer for the left side is going to be y. And in the right side, we're going to do negative 3x divided by negative 1 is going to give us positive 3x. 4 divided by negative 1, positive and negative will give you a negative, so we're going to write negative 4. And that's how you turn the equation into the form y equals mx plus b. And that's all. You're doing inverse operations to leave the y by itself. The vocabulary for this part is also going to be the same: linear equation, inverse operations, and variables. Make sure that you're writing this down, and the steps are going to be the same. We have only 3 steps to follow. So let's start with the first step. We're going to draw a vertical line down the equal sign to divide the left and right side. then we're going to highlight the terms with a variable y. Again, we only have one term with a variable y. This one looks a little bit different, also because the x is in the back and the y is in the front, and the y actually has a number in front of it. So we're going to isolate the y. So we're going to use the inverse operations. If we're subtracting 4x from y, the inverse of that is going to be adding 4x from both sides. When you do that, on the left side, that's going to cancel. So we're only left with 2y. And that's going to be equal to 4x minus 20. Now, we know that we are going to highlight the y because that's what we're trying to leave by itself. That operation that is happening between the 2 and the y is actually multiplication. So this is a 2 times y. So the inverse of that is going to be dividing by 2. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. When you divide 2y by 2, you're only going to be left with y because the 2's cancel out. Now, on the other side, that's going to look a little bit different. And I want to show you why. Whenever you're dividing a whole expression by a number, you need to make sure that you're dividing every term. So you need to divide this one by 2 and this one by 2. So I want to rewrite this as 4x divided by 2 minus 20 divided by 2. This is pretty simple math. So 4 divided by 2 is going to give you 2x. And then we have minus 20 divided by 2, which is going to be 10. Now this is in the form y equals mx plus b.